Hey y'all, what's up? My name is Ty and no. Hey, what's up y'all? I'm Ty and you're currently watching my YouTube channel, Chai with Ty. Thank you so much for tuning in with me this week. Today we are having a little chat about the 12th house, which is considered to be one of the most understood houses in astrology. Before we get started, I just want to say that February readings will be open this week, January 28th. I will be offering life purpose readings and general 60-minute consultations where you can come and ask me any questions about your chart, transits, anything that you want to know. And I'm also doing business and career readings as well, so be on the lookout for that. Now, I took hella notes on the 12th house. So I'm a 12th houser myself. I've got my sun, I've got my sun, Mercury, and Venus there. I've got a Mercury-Venus conjunction. Yeah, so it's pretty interesting having that energy and living as a 12th houser because, you know, everyone seems to be quite confused, or it's just like this mysterious energy around it. I did look at some traditional perspectives on the 12th house and why there's such a dark association with it. And I also looked at more modern perspectives as well, which I will have linked below all of the sources that I use. But today especially, I will be reading from just a little excerpt out of Hellenistic Astrology by Breenan, available in fine bookstores literally everywhere, and also Astrology, Karma, and Transformation by Arroyo, which is on my Google Books on my phone. And I also looked at a few articles just from like astro.com and just some other amazing astrologers that blog and have like have websites, so I will be linking those below as well. And then of course I'll be offering up my own knowledge and my unique perspective on the 12th house and how people can utilize this energy, because although the 12th house seems to be a place of misfortune by many, it actually can be a place where we can really discover the depths of ourselves, why we do the things the way that we do, and how we can let go of control and flow with the experiences that come our way. So let's get started. Okay, y'all, so I have hella notes, like I said, just all in here, so I will be looking down a lot today, okay? Also, it's so important to note that this is going to be, generally speaking, about the 12th house. I will be talking about the luminaries within the house, so the sun and the moon, as well as the inner planets, so Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Won't be focusing too much on Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, but I will be covering Neptune as it pertains to ownership of the 12th house in modern day astrology. In traditional astrology, the 12th house is ruled by Jupiter, whereas if we are looking at it from a modern perspective, we would be looking at Neptune, right? So I already said it's a cadent or cadent house. General themes that you'll see as it pertains to the 12th house in more modern day perspectives is isolation, jails, hospitals, monasteries. You can see ancestors, the subconscious, things that are hidden from us, okay? So what's hidden from, so anything that's hidden from us or anything that's isolated could be considered to be ruled by the 12th house. So for example, where is an isolated place where you won't find like any other people? The deep ocean, right? So if you're out there selling completely by yourself in isolation, that's ruled by the 12th house, right? Or if you like go on a submarine and you go explore the deep sea, that's ruled by the 12th house, right? So anything relating to things of this nature, okay? I always say that the upbringing of the 12th house placements is especially important, because it has a great influence on the subconscious patterns and ways of thinking. Also, the conditions prior to the mother's birth are very important. And when we take a look at Hellenistic astrology, you will see why from a more traditional perspective. But generally speaking right now, I will say that yes, the conditions of the mother, because it's just before the ascendant, right? So just before you were born, the 12th house, right? It tells the conditions that your mother may have been going through or experiences that she was having right up to your birth. So for example, I've got my sun in the 12th house. It is opposite my moon. So my dad, I was far away from. My mom moved before I was born, separated from him. So yeah, that's actually a very clear-cut explanation of how that energy can tend to play out, right? Continuing on, so people tend to say that like 12th housers are like not conscious of what's going on around them, but I don't think this tends to be true. It really depends on the conditions of the house and really what we have in there. So today we're going to be, generally speaking, we may, you know, interpret a little bit, but really unless you've got unless the conditions of the placements there, like you have some more tough aspects like squares then or oppositions, then you know maybe you may have a little bit more difficulty accessing this energy, but generally speaking I don't necessarily think that it's unreachable or it's something that is hard for 12th housers to reach. I just think it's all about looking within and tapping into that energy because it's already there, especially if you have the luminaries such as the sun or the moon placed there, because remember, luminaries tend to illuminate, right, what is there. The thing with the 12th house, remember, in a blog post that I was reading, it was describing it as like the fog, the mist, you know, really early in the morning or like at sunset, when the sun appears to be like really big and red, when we know it's not, it's an illusion, right? So the 12th house can represent those different illusions and not necessarily seeing it clearly. So again, it's not that it's not accessible to us, it's that maybe there's some lack of clarity in how we are perceiving this energy about ourselves, because again, the 12th house is the subconscious realm, right? So what I always say about the 12th house, consciousness and awareness is the key to really benefiting from 12th house placements. Not to say that it is easy. I do think naturally that it can pose challenges because the 12th house is all about surrendering and letting go and just flowing, right? It's the things that are out of our control. In traditional astrology, it's said to represent, you know, the things that are out of our control, like what sickness, diseases, enemies, like ailments, right? Injuries, things that we can't really clearly like grasp onto. Right? We can't control these outcomes or these things. So with 12th housers, it's all about how can you just let go and learn to observe and see life from outside of the lens of your mind and tune into how you perceive life from the spirit, right? So so 12th house also represents losses, okay? So we're actually gonna start like diving a little bit into the more traditional perspectives on this. I'm going to read just a little tiny excerpt out of Chris Breenan's Hellenistic Astrology book because when I was doing research and just taking down notes on the 12th house, like it was so well-formed and clear, and I think that it will give a really great depiction of a more traditional perspective. Okay. The 12th place is called the place of bad spirit, and it is the joy of Saturn. The 12th is also called the pre-ascension of the hour marker, since it is the sign that rises just prior to the native's birth, right? Rhetorius, y'all, I don't speak English. Like, I don't know these ancient ass names, okay? Anywho, Rhetorus, or whatever his name is, calls it the place between roles, medicosmios, and says that it signifies everything that happens before the moment of the native's birth, both for the mother and the child, since the sign rises prior to the separation of the two. In the text of the Hellenistic astrologers, the 12th becomes the primary place associated with enemies. More broadly, it is associated with loss and misfortune, and in the delineation material, it is commonly associated with suffering, ailments, injuries, dangers, weakness, death, and troubles. What did I say? Last line, most of this derives from the fact that it is in a declining place that is in aversion to the rising sign, as well as the fact that it is that in declining from the rising, it may have been thought to signify that which detracts from the life and or the spirit of the native. So it's like taking something away, right? Again, representing loss. Okay, so I wrote down some keywords regarding different aspects of the 12th house, right? So hidden activities, classified information, addiction, subconscious habits, unconscious habits, dreams, ancestral connection, right? So it says it's the joy of Saturn because when you think about Saturn, it really is comfortable with these 12th house themes like loss or, you know, like not suffering, but suffering. Just kidding. Really though, so with Saturn being the joy of the 12th house, I think that 12th housers can tend to learn a lot from Saturn and their Saturn placement as well. Even if you look at more modern astrology, this will help you to see a little bit more where you have to really put that work in and work through the restraints, because the 12th house can be a very restraining house at times, depending again on the conditions and planets that are placed there, right? So for example, again, I have Mercury, Venus conjunct in my 12th house. So what do I mean by restraints or restrictions? So I'm very creative. I love to write. I love to design things, right? But I have to do it in very specific conditions and circumstances. Like if you put me like at a Starbucks out with a bunch of people, I cannot work, I cannot create. Why? 12th house, that restriction, right? I have to be in an isolated space completely by myself, present. I have to meditate first. There's a process that I have to go through, right? That sounds very Saturnian, right? Having that discipline and having that structure and still fulfilling the need really fulfill the needs of the 12th house by isolating myself, by making sure I'm in a good space, in a meditative space. And by doing that, by having that discipline, then I'm activating that energy and allowing it to flow through, right? So with the 12th house, we have to do something in order to get something in return. And this is just my modern perspective on it, right? Because what are some keywords for Saturn? Discipline, foundations, numbness, discomfort, obedience, patience. Really big thing with 12th house placements is patience, right? And if you even think about it from a more traditional perspective, with Jupiter being the traditional ruler of the 12th house, what does Jupiter represent sometimes? It can represent the big picture of things and where we can tend to like overlook, right? We don't really get too much into the details because Jupiter can be very comfortable sometimes. It does enhance, you know, it does represent abundance, affluence, it could be our beliefs, and all of that is fine and dandy. But again, remember, because it can see the big picture so well, sometimes it can overlook the details, which is very, very 12th house and Pisces, you know, not really having some things kind of go over our heads, right? And when talking about Pisces as well, some things that come to mind with that, so escapism, you know, fog, something that is just misty, that creates some type of illusion, oceans, the occult, the intangible. So what's intangible? Our psychic gifts, our minds, our consciousness, our perception of reality. These are all 12th house things, right? So now I'm gonna dive a little bit into more of a modern perspective on the 12th house and also offer up some of my advice for people who have the luminaries, so the sun or the moon placed in the 12th house, along with inner planets such as Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And I'm also gonna talk a little bit about Neptune as well, okay? So I'm reading from Astrology, Karma, and Transformation by Stephen Arroyo really quickly so that I can just give you guys a really good modern day perspective on the 12th house. So the 12th house, by contrast, reveals influences that are totally and obviously beyond our control. It is often clear to the person that he or she will not be able to satisfy the inner longings through any ordinary activity, although this clarity may take years of suffering to develop. The yearning for emotional peace found in the 8th house is still present, but here it is intermixed with an awareness of the need for ultimate peace for the soul. Planets in the natal 12th house symbolize forces which often overwhelm us and which can be dealt with effectively only by redirecting that energy to an ideal that inspires us inwardly towards greater self-knowledge and devotion to the oneness of all things, and outwardly towards greater generosity of spirit and service. I love this because it speaks to the 12th house so clearly. So 12th house placements, you're not meant to do everything like everyone else. You're not searching for the same thing in life. Just from a more modern perspective, you are here to, I mean, this is like this is like head ass, but like you're really here to like dive deep into yourself, to explore your subconscious. Like you have a particular purpose here to find inner peace and to know about what it means to connect with the soul and the spirit. And although there may be, you know, challenges and things that you have to overcome to fulfill the restrictive, quote unquote, nature of this house, it is still possible. Remember what I was talking about with the Mercury-Venus conjunction in my 12th house. As long as you're doing something to create that discipline and that structure that house does need, then you will see the results from it. I mean, even having my son there, generally speaking, I like to do things that are creative. You know, my son is 3 degrees in Virgo. I love being of service to other people. So, you know, working within conditions like volunteering work in hospitals, or, you know, even doing things relating to like jails or prison, any kind of volunteer work relating to that is very fulfilling for me. And I also like just feel very spiritually aware when I am engaging in these activities. Another thing to know about the 12th house really quickly before we get into the planets there is that it is a collective house. So number one, if you have placements here, especially like Mercury or the sun, I believe, and the moon, I believe, you are very, very intuitive, okay? So because it represents collective energy, collective consciousness, you could also be, you know, picking up on a lot of things that don't belong to you with this house. People with this house tend to be self-sacrificing, as they say. I feel like this is more so if you have some more heavier aspects, or if the conditions, again, of this house are not as well. So you've got to look at the ruler of the house. You've got to look at where Neptune or Jupiter is in your chart as well, to really get a full picture. But yeah, again, just making sure that you are able to differentiate what belongs to you and what belongs to everyone else. So how can you do that, right? So 2 things that I recommend for every 12th house placement. Number 1, meditation. I know that like a lot of, you know, websites, a lot of modern astrological books say this, but I swear by it. I, as a 12th houser myself, have found this to be very helpful, and also a lot of my 12th houser friends that I know as well, you know, getting into meditation, whatever that looks like for you. So maybe it's not sitting down, you know, just like structured in that sense and just sitting with your eyes closed and breathing. Maybe it's doing something that engages all of your senses and makes you fully present. What if that's writing for you? What if that's painting for you? You know, all of those things will differentiate based on you and your personal preferences, obviously, but some form of meditation, something that makes you present, makes you aware, and activates every single part of your being is going to be so beneficial. The second thing, because 12th housers can tend to overlook things, and as I say, like, there's not a full or complete picture. Something's a little misty, something's a little off, right? Or not off necessarily, but there's something that we're not fully seeing. Journal. Journaling will help you solve this issue, quote unquote, so much, because we tend to get out a lot of things that we're repressing or that are within the subconscious when we sit and when we write and just allow those thoughts to flow, okay? So now we're gonna get into how the planets tend to operate within the 12th house, okay? So first I'm going to talk about the luminaries, the sun and the moon. So like we were talking about earlier, having the luminaries there gives that fog, and it gives that shine, like we were talking about, you know, when it's a full moon, or and there's that mist there, there's that light coming down, right? But there's still a little bit that we can't see, or even whenever you have like a really big red sun, you know, when the sun is setting, yeah, it looks pretty, it's great, but it's not an accurate depiction of the sun throughout the rest of the day, right? It's an illusion, okay? So even when we have more shine in this house, it's basically still saying that we have to make that conscious effort to observe and to look at what is going on. So if we've got the sun there, Number one, it can show us, whichever placement that we have within our 12th house, it can show us a few things. So it can show us where we need to be more aware. So if you have the sun there, how can you be more aware of your sense of identity, of your ego, right? Because a lot of times it just goes not over your head, but you may not be putting a special energy or focus into this area. And remember, because 12th houses also are hidden enemies, it can show us how these planets can hinder us. So having a sun there could mean that your own ego could be your worst enemy at times. So remember to just keep things in check, stay conscious, stay aware. And also remember that when you have the sun there, that maybe you know, you have to figure out how you can shine and how you can best bring forth your light and your energy. And so trying to do that in a way that everyone else does, you know, maybe being in public spaces just isn't for you. You know, maybe working behind the scenes, or just working in spaces that make you feel comfortable or give you that sense of isolation that you need will fulfill, again, that identity. And it will give you a healthy sense of ego, because we all need our ego. It's just remembering to not let it do whatever it wants, which we have to be aware and conscious of to do that, right? The sun can also show us the conditions of the dominant parent, like having it in the 12th house could show some type of separation, or just some lack of connection, lack of awareness as it pertains to the connection and the relationship that we're having with the dominant parent. Having the moon there, similar. So moon is a little bit different than our identity, our ego, our sense of self, right? It is like our emotional world, our shadow, right? Because the light that the moon is getting is coming from the sun as well, right? So like I said, it's the shadow. Having the moon here really brings a awareness and an illumination on the subconscious feelings and patterns that are coming up for us. Also, this one does show attunement to other people's feelings and emotions as well. It could show that maybe your mother was going through a lot of heavy or tumultuous feelings before leading up to the birth, which did have an impact on the subconscious, because it is scientifically shown that, you know, the things that the parent is going through, the emotions that the parent is going through, is passed down onto us. So what the mother was feeling in the womb, we also felt. And this is a special for people with the moon in the 12th house. Again, though, when you do have the moon here, you can tend to be a lot more intuitive. So this is calling for you to be more conscious and aware of that, and following and trusting your gut instincts and your feelings. Because the moon is ruled by Cancer, which rules what? The stomach. So learn how to tune into those feelings, tune into what your gut is telling you, because a lot of times things that tend to go over your head, it does not go over your gut, if that makes sense. Our intuition always knows, and it's always telling us, even if we're not conscious and aware of that. So you'll notice having the moon here, like where you'll get this intuitive feeling, even if you consciously ignore it, like you'll come back around later and be like, man, like I should have listened to that, right? So the lesson here again with the moon is learning, you know, how to be conscious, aware, and more, what's the word? Focus on what it is that we are feeling, and separating that from everyone else, and remembering that it is okay to hold space for ourselves, and that we don't have, that our feelings and emotions don't have to be quote unquote hidden to us. We're allowed to explore those and illuminate those. And even if we can't always see it clearly, remember with the moon that you can always feel it clearly, okay? Okay. Next, we have the inner planets. So we're going to be talking about the, Mercury, Venus, and Mars really quickly. Then lastly, Saturn, Jupiter. So Mercury, Venus, and Mars is all about, let's start with Mercury. So Mercury is what communication, it is our speech, our intellect, like how we're exchanging ideas with other people. Having Mercury here, a few things. So I've personally found these people, including myself, because I'm a Mercury 12th houser, are just very attuned to higher realms. I don't know if you guys believe in spirit guides, or just spirits generally speaking, which is also ruled by 12th house, deities, spirits, anything like that has to do with like psychic phenomena as well is ruled by the 12th house. So again, having Mercury here, these people are naturally attuned to these messages that are coming through. So they'll tend to like get like this source of inspiration and just channel it and not even fully be present or aware of where it's coming from. So what is the lesson with Mercury in the 12th house? So figuring out and getting to the bottom of allowing oneself to explore and discover and define their truth, their thoughts, right? And also allowing for themselves to be guided by their guides and by these otherworldly beings who they have such close and easy connection with. So you'll notice people with their Mercury in the 12th house tend to have like very active dream states, because again, like Mercury's the mind. So these people's like guides will come through to them in the dream world, or maybe when they're writing, doing anything related to mercurial things. They'll even notice like in conversations that they're having with people as well, that, you know, spirit can come through that way as well. So again, with the Mercury in the 12th house, it's all about just bringing more clarity, awareness, and really putting that intention into one's thoughts and what one has to say. And also remember that even if you're not fully understanding of why you're having these thoughts, or why you think the way that you do, why you have the intellect that you do, be open to exploring it. Journaling is especially great for Mercury in the 12th house in particular, because Mercury ruled by Gemini, co-ruler with Virgo, but because Gemini rules the hands, sitting and writing, it activates that mercurial energy, right? Okay. So next we've got Venus, which is creativity, beauty, wealth, abundance, erotica, fashion, right? All of these things within the 12th house. I'm not going to focus too much on love with this one. I know a lot of people like to, I know a lot of people say that, you know, the Venus in the 12th house can be like self-sacrificing in love. I feel like this energy can play out in a multitude of ways. Maybe it can just be that you have a lot of hidden talents or a lot of hidden creativity that you keep to yourself. And when I say hidden, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's hidden from you. It could just be that you don't really tap into those gifts around other people. Like you need to be by yourself. You need to be by yourself again in that isolated space, just to yourself, and then you just get that creative inspiration and power that you need. When it does come to love, I would say, can Venus and 12th housers be self-sacrificing? I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on the condition, sign, aspects that are happening to the Venus in that house. I know for me, it didn't really play out that way, and it did play out for me in the sense that, so I'm partners with a woman, and we weren't always out about our relationship, so there was something secret, there was something hidden about it. It's not like that anymore, but that is a way that Venus in the 12th house could play out, right? Because like I said, it's what's hidden, okay? Another thing with Venus in the 12th house, it could even mean, because 12th house also rules foreign lands, foreign settlement, that you could meet someone of a foreign culture, of a foreign nature, because traditional ruler of 12th house is Jupiter, right? So you could meet a foreigner, move to a foreign land, get married, and like just live away from everyone else, to be in love and to be with this person, right? So the lesson for people with Venus in the 12th house is how they can give love, how they can express their creativity in a way that fulfills them, in a way that gives them that sense of authenticity. That is a really big thing I noticed with 12th housers too, is just figuring out authenticity and like what it means to like fully be themselves, because again, it's taking on all this collective energy. So you could be trying to morph, it's mutable energy, right? You could be trying to morph and fit into all of these different boxes, when in reality it's telling you like express yourself in your own unique way, even if that's just for you, right? Okay, so lastly, we have Mars, which is all about actions, impulsions, and initiative, right? So this one can make us feel, or it can make 12th housers feel physically bound, if that makes sense. So because there's that sense of impulsion in the realm of the unconscious, someone can be very, very impulsive about their decisions, that can end up putting them in situations where they have enemies. Again, 12th house is hidden enemies, and actually having Mars there can activate this energy, again, depending on aspects, depending on conditions of the house. It could, you know, put these people in situations where these people can take advantage of them. So remember, like, remember, like, what's the thing about the 12th house? It's hidden, it's unconscious, right? Another thing about the 12th house, it can rule substances as well. So I'll just use this as an example. So if you have Mars in your 12th house, for example, and it was afflicted, like it was making a square to Pluto, and you were one who like really like to get into substances, who really like to get into drinking, which is ruled by the 12th house, you just impulsively like do it, go out, and then you've got that square to Pluto, and you know, someone takes advantage of maybe your possessions or your things, you know, depending. Let's say like your Mars is in Taurus, for example, and is making that square to Pluto. So somebody takes advantage of you because you're in that state. There's a lack of awareness. There's something hidden from you, right? And they steal your wallet out of your pocket while you guys are out together. Do you see what I'm saying there? So with that nature of Mars, it's asking, what can you do again to ground yourself and to put yourself in a state of presence where you're not so quick to unconsciously do those things out of impulsion. You can sit and breathe and be like, is this a decision I want to make? Right? So that's the restrictive nature of the 12th house that you need for that Mars. Remember, like, we can use that energy to our benefit, but it's becoming aware of those unconscious habits that could be to our own detriment, right? So that was just one example of how Mars could play out. It doesn't necessarily have to be like people taking things from you. Really, that was just an example. It could even be with one's own impulsions or with one's own decision making. They get themselves into these situations that they didn't really think through because they were just like so excited about it, so excited to get into you know, whatever it happened to be. So again, because like Mars tends to overlook, because the 12th house tends to overlook, you have that impulsive or just energy within Mars that's ready to take initiative and action. It could even be within the 12th house, this energy is kind of being repressed almost. So you're not aware of it, that you're not like really fulfilling or unleashing those feelings and those emotions and letting them out in healthy ways. Because I know that the moon tends to rule our emotions and our emotional patterns, but because Mars is that initiative and that impulse that we have within us, it rules different emotions such as like aggression or anger or letting out those buildups of energies that we all have from time to time, right? So with that energy with Mars in the 12th house like that, it can tend to build up, that aggression can tend to build up until it just explodes in situations that we really didn't see coming. So with Mars in the 12th house, the important thing is finding healthy ways to let out, to get out someone's aggression, to let out their impulses as well. So different activities like martial arts or like kickboxing, just some type of physical activity to put you in that grounded and present state will bring that clarity and will help you see your subconscious patterns as it pertains to Mars. As it pertains to Mars related things. It will help you to see those patterns and not overlook those decision makings. So all in all, becoming more aware, becoming more present, and doing something that grounds the body, that grounds the mind, that grounds those emotions or those impulses, and being able to see that will really assist again with becoming more aware and just allowing with the 12th house, if that makes sense. Okay, so lastly we have Jupiter and Saturn, and then we're going to talk a little bit about Neptune and wrap it up. So with Jupiter and Saturn here, so again, Jupiter is the traditional ruler of the 12th house, and then when you have Saturn in the 12th house, it's joy, right? So that's interesting. I have not personally met too many people with their Jupiter in the 12th house, but just generally speaking, it is at home, depending on, you know, the sign, the aspects, it can play out differently. I personally see this is a really big one for people going like down a spiritual path, right? Because what is Jupiter role? Like belief systems, religion, higher learning, philosophical thought. So with this one, it's really about like exploring the depths of beliefs, exploring the depths of spirituality within one's own mind, and maybe even like this could be like going to isolated places like a temple and going and meditating with like Buddhist priests and just learning and absorbing that knowledge, getting that higher wisdom, you know, having those having those teachers to inform us and to make us more aware and more knowledgeable about these different topics. So for Jupiter in the 12th house people, it could be beneficial to seek out and to search for teachers. Maybe when you're traveling and you're going to isolated places, you find the most clarity about yourself and about why you are here and your own spirituality, your own soul. With Saturn here, because the joy of Saturn is the 12th house, I don't necessarily see this as like, oh, it's doing so amazing, but it's a little bit more used to these conditions, right? I'm not too privy on traditional astrology, but from a modern astrological perspective and looking at this, I do think that Saturn can tend to operate a little bit better, again, because it's used to it. So where you're having these instances of feeling limited or restricted and within the 12th house, generally speaking, having Saturn here can actually make it for you. So having Saturn here in the 12th house and its joy in conditions that may be a little bit restrictive or restraining, it's actually doing a little bit better here, again, because Saturn is already about like discomfort and growth. Saturn tends to be the planet that's like, yeah, you got to figure this out for yourself. You got to figure out how to navigate this. I'm not going to help you, because once you do, you grow so much, you learn so much. So whereas Jupiter is like the teacher that comes in and helps you and gives you this wisdom and knowledge, Saturn is a teacher in the sense that it's like it throws you all the tools and it's like, here, do it yourself. Go ahead. It'll be fine. But really, like I said, I don't have a specific delineation for Saturn really being here, other than the fact that it tends to do well. Not well necessarily, but it tends to do a little bit more comfortably here, generally speaking, not looking at any other conditions like aspects or the ruler of the house or anything like that. Lastly, we have Neptune, which is the modern day ruler of the 12th house, rules illusions, creativity, spirituality, substances, just those areas of life which tend to be foggy or mysterious, right? These days when people talk about the 12th house, they're like, oh, it's like super, creative. These people are super intuitive. This is where we can see psychic phenomena and power. I do personally believe that a lot of people, especially people with mediumship abilities, people with just different psychic abilities in general, have a lot of these people have special connections to their 12th house. So I do agree in that sense that that Neptune kind of influences it in a modern day way. And that way, also as it pertains to substances, especially when we're talking about anything that, transforms the subconscious, it transforms the mind, which drugs do, like psychedelics, for example, shrooms, like acid, anything like that, or even alcohol, really, because it changes it changes your personality so much. And what do these psychedelics or these substances do? They illuminate and they bring this clarity into aspects and hidden areas of life that you weren't looking for, or that were there, that had always been in our everyday lives, but we didn't necessarily see it so clearly. But like taking these substances, for example, could illuminate or open them up for you. Not endorsing the use of drugs here. Actually, you'll tend to notice that people with 12th house placements, at times, I'm not saying this is for everyone, this is generally speaking, can dabble with different substances or different drugs, as these people like to explore the psyche and explore the mind. I know the psyche is generally ruled by the 8th house, but then again, like I said, 12th house is ruled by the subconscious. So these people do like exploring these parts of themselves. So all in all, that was just my little general overview on the 12th house and how people can really benefit from the energy who have these placements. I don't think the 12th house is anything to be afraid of. Just like with any other house, they're good and bad, or positive and negative connotations to each and every house. And it really depends on the individual's chart, and also not only their individual chart, but what they decide to do with that chart and with these placements that can show how it really tends to play out. But generally speaking, I am absolutely a lover of the 12th house. We're never gonna know everything about it. Again, it's hidden. Like, it really is a subjective experience. It's for every single 12th houser to experience and to have on their own. But that was just my little take and just giving a little traditional and a little bit of a modern perspective on it. So I hope that helped. If you would like to book a reading with me, I will leave the link below. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, and we will see each other. I don't know, but I'll see you guys next time. Okay, bye.